Do you believe in reparations? The idea that black people should get reparations as a result of slavery and discrimination.
You know, I have long thought that this country would be better off if we did find a way to do that.
I am Terrell Jermaine Starr, senior reporter with The Root. Sitting with me is Ann Brannigan, staff writer for The Root, and our wonderful editor-in-chief, Danielle Belton, and we are talking with the former Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Julián Castro. How you doing, sir?
Doing great. Good to be with you.
So I want to talk to you about your own strategy running for president. And, you know, obviously black women are the, most important core of the electorate. And so do you feel like a Democratic candidate for president can win the primary without winning over black women?
No, I don't. And that's why I intend to compete very much, for black women, of course for every other part of the electorate. But, I feel good that when I get out there and articulate a strong positive vision for the country's future that is not afraid to take on a lot of the issues that we're talking about right now and to do it in an earnest way, that I'm going to get a lot of good support that maybe right now people don't see, but they will by the end.
How do you plan to compete? I mean, considering that you have, Kamala Harris in the race, who is also actively courting this vote, as well as pretty much every other Democratic candidate.
Yeah,
because we're pretty hot right now.
That is true. That is true.
The thing about this campaign is that it's going to feature probably the most talented group of candidates that the Democratic Party has seen in quite a while. And I look forward to that because at the end of it, it's going to mean that so many different voices are heard. And the only thing that I can say is that I'm going to go out there and talk about what the vision that I see for the country's future. And I've lived a life that certainly has been different from a lot of other people, but I think I've lived a life where I know what it's like to struggle, to face hardship, and also to achieve my dreams. And I'm going to go out there and speak to the struggles that people are facing right now and how I think that we can make sure that everybody can prosper in this country, and also speak to folks who feel like they've achieved their dreams. And I want to talk to them as well about why it's important that in the 21st century that everybody counts and that we're a country where we don't leave anybody behind.
So what policies would you offer that center black women?
Well, I think that we can do a better job in investing in everything from affordable housing opportunity to educational opportunity to making sure that we're investing in underserved communities. I did a lot of that, focused on a lot of that when I was at HUD. When we invest in things like Section 8 and public housing, but also I remember talking to many people along the way, some of whom were black women who had the opportunity to go through some of the job training efforts that HUD invested in so that they could get the skills they needed to be able to get a good job and to provide for their family. I'm going to talk about those things that I think really go straight to the quality of life and the opportunity that a lot of people in the country need. And then also, of course, we're going to address issues that we've talked about, whether it's reforming how our police departments work or reforming our justice system and improving it, that I think disproportionately negatively impact African American men and women. And I believe that that's going to resonate with folks.
An issue of economics, do you believe in reparations? The idea that black people should get reparations as a result of slavery and discrimination.
I have long thought that this country would be better off if we did find a way to do that. Yeah, I have long thought that this country, the United States of America, would be better off if we could find an effective way to do that. Getting there would be a tremendous challenge, but I think ultimately that it's worth the challenge. And if I were president, I would look at establishing an effort to figure that out.
And if I could follow that up really quickly, reparations is something that has happened in other countries, as well as this country. We did give Japanese Americans reparations for what happened during World War II when they were placed in internment camps. So what do you find challenging in particular about reparations to African American descendants of slavery?
Well, I don't find the notion challenging. What I do find challenging is the best way to do that. How to ensure that it's fair to every individual, We're talking about now 150 years, and there's a process there. But what I believe is that it's fundamentally worth that because of the injustice. What that would look like, I can't say that I have that all figured out, but I do believe that the country would be better off if we were to do that.
Yeah. So let's go into foreign policy. Trump pulled out the INF treaty. Do you feel like that was a mistake, and what's your strategy on denuclearization with Russia?
Yeah, I do think that that was probably a mistake for him to pull out of the INF. First of all, that INF treaty had better terms, probably, than we're going to be able to recreate if we try and get into a treaty, which I'm sure we will at some point in the future. Now, if he does, because I believe there's a 6-month window here,
correct.
If 6 months from now we do indeed withdraw, and I know Russia has already said that they're ready to withdraw, but assuming that happens, then what we need to do is that we need to look at, okay, well, in this 21st century, given the new realities of these weapon systems, of the relationships involved, of new countries that we may want to engage in a treaty like China. How do we construct a plan that will help keep the United States safe and its allies safe? Because as you know, over in Europe, they are against this. They're very nervous about the implications, especially for these medium-range missiles.
Right.
We need to be smart about aggressively pursuing an updated treaty that may include other partners that I think will help keep the United States, its allies, and the world safer in the years to come.
Speaking on international relations, so much of the Trump administration has been about pulling back from the world stage, almost putting America in a cocoon, pulling out of treaties, changing treaties, drastically changing relations with NATO and things of that nature. Of the different things the Trump administration has done on the international stage, if you become president in 2020, what's the first thing that you would roll back or change?
The biggest long-term threat to our prosperity here in the United States is climate change. We already see the impact of it, whether it's these hurricanes that are more frequent or any number of other things. One mistake that this Trump administration has made is trying to withdraw from the Paris Climate Accord. My first executive order on my first day as president on January 20th of 2021 would be to recommit to the Paris Climate Accord. And not just stop there, but in a very earnest way, to work with Congress to pass a Green New Deal, to invest in sustainability, to do it in a way that creates jobs, recognizing that it's a false choice. We don't have to choose between protecting our planet and economic growth. We can create great jobs and also invest in sustainability and protect our planet. So that is the number one thing I would do, is reverse that Paris Climate Accord decision.
So would you support the Green New Deal that they're talking about in Congress right now?
I have a twin brother, Joaquin. Joaquin likes to say that the way to tell us apart is that I'm a minute uglier than he is. But the real difference is he's in Congress right now and I'm not. But he's one of the co-sponsors of Alejandra Ocasio-Cortez's Green New Deal. Both he and I have a commitment to make sure that we can do both of those things, that we can create great jobs and grow economically and also protect our planet. So I'm happy to see it, I support it. I'm sure that as it winds its way through committee and so forth, that it's gonna, there's always compromise that happens, but we need that kind of investment in the future.
And you're in a unique situation because you are the mayor of San Antonio. And one of the main things that people are talking about now is police brutality. You oversaw a larger police department that had its own issues with abuse, right? And so in 2016, the San Antonio Express found that San Antonio Police Department used excessive force against minority almost twice the rate. You actually were criticized for, inadequate response. And just looking back, can you tell us how you managed this issue, and would you have done anything differently?
I don't think any of these big city police departments, or smaller town police departments for that matter, are where they need to be when it comes to making sure that everybody is treated the same when they interact with a police officer. I think there are a lot of things that we can do to improve that. I think a lot of times our police departments, obviously there are a lot of people that do great work, a lot of honorable police officers, but they're often very insular and resistant to change. When I was mayor, I was part of the effort to try and make sure that it did change.
All right. Should ICE be abolished?
Well, I think that it should be reconstituted. About a year ago, there were 19 people that work in ICE that came forward that said that ICE, the way that it's set up right now, is not nearly as effective as it could be at pursuing its mission. I led a federal department, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and so I know that there are federal reorganizations and a rearrangement of how things are done all the time. I think that we need to get to a place where our enforcement efforts, because we're always going to have enforcement efforts. There's always going to be an enforcement effort, but those enforcement efforts need to be conducted in a way that is respectful, that is compassionate, and of course, that implements the law.
So to be clear, there are many people who feel that the division is so corrupted and it's so evil in its foundation that it does not need to be in existence. So to be clear, you're saying you're not calling for an abolishment of ICE.
It's also not that old of an agency. It's something that a lot of people bring up as well.
ICE came into being post 9/11. What I'm saying is that if the question is, do I support abolishing our enforcement? No. We're always going to have enforcement. Do I support the idea of redoing that or rearranging how we do it? Yes, I do. And I think that we can reconstitute those efforts going forward.
What do you think of the job Secretary Ben Carson is doing at HUD?
Not much. You know, obviously I completely disagree with the direction that Dr. Carson is taking. What I see at HUD right now is a blaming of the poor and a belief that it's as simple as that to just pull yourself up by your bootstraps, when all of us know that that's not the case, that you're functioning within a system, within institutions that in many ways, whether it's bad schools or law enforcement or other issues, that kind of pull you down, and there's no real recognition of that. And policy-wise, what they've done is they've gone back on affirmatively furthering fair housing, which was a groundbreaking rule that we implemented in 2015 to make sure that we could further provide equal housing opportunity in communities throughout this country that are getting federal taxpayer dollars. It's put the biggest teeth into the Fair Housing Act that we had since 1968, and they put it on ice. The first thing that should happen in the new administration in January of 2021 is that we should reinstitute the affirmatively furthering fair housing so that we have better housing opportunity out there. And that's not going to happen while Dr. Carson, I think, is the secretary. And I have nothing personally against him. You know, I'm sure he's a fine man. But I completely disagree with the direction that the department has gone in.
Would you say that is the most actively harmful thing that he's done, you know, including rhetoric, including his messaging? Would you highlight that policy or another one that you find to be the most actively harmful? I
don't mean this in a glib way, but it's hard to tell because there are several of them. There's also scaling back on the equal access rule, which was promulgated to help ensure that when somebody from the LGBTQ community seeks public housing or shelter, that they are treated fairly and equally. And there's a scaling back of commitment to that. And so it in a number of ways, the direction that they're taking our housing laws and housing enforcement in is the wrong direction.
Is Donald Trump a racist?
Well, I think that he says things and that he acts in ways that are racist, and that he uses race to prop up his support with his base, and that he's done that against different communities. So people like to say, well, what does he believe in his heart? You know, to me, it's what do you do? And his actions, I would say, have been racist actions.
But he is not? Because it's like you're identifying the racism, and we ask many people this, but for people, when I ask the question, they're not willing to identify and call out the racist. You get what I'm saying?
No, I do. No, I mean, I think that he's acted in a racist way. When you look at the Central Park Five, for instance, or his comments about native tribes when he was testifying before Congress 20-something years ago. So he has acted in a racist way, yeah.
Obviously, the final question that we have for you, sir, is why should everyone consider voting for you?
Well, I think that people should vote for me because, number one, I actually have a track record of getting things done. I think that people are looking for somebody that can get things done. Being a mayor is all about getting things done, and being a cabinet secretary, it's executive experience, getting things done. I've lived a life where I can understand both the struggles of people who are aspiring, who are struggling now, and also people who have achieved their dreams. And so I can relate to people no matter where they are, who they are. And I know that in this 21st century that we need to be the smartest, the healthiest, the fairest, and the most prosperous nation on earth. And I have a plan to get us there. And I'm going to give people something to believe in, something that they can stand for, not only something that they can stand against. And I think that people are going to respond.
Thank you so much for your time, sir.
Thanks a lot.